This is episode number 628 of the Inner Fight Podcast. Welcome back to another episode of the show, no matter where you are in the world. Thanks a lot for downloading, tuning in, and listening to us. Really appreciate the support as we do the support of the show sponsors, Smith Street Paleo. Thank you to everyone who's reached out to them and is on a meal plan, ordering pancake, waffle mix, bread mix, or all of the good treats that you can find over at smithstreetpaleo.com. Give them a shout. Hello at smithstreetpaleo.com. They'd love to hear from you. My guest today is a gentleman by the name of David O'Mahony, who I watched his TED Talk, which I put a link to in the show notes, about a week ago, and I was like, I've got to speak to that guy for the show. He can help so many people in the situation that we're in right now, in life, in just a number of different ways. So I got hold of David, and he agreed, and I'm super grateful that he did that. I actually got hold of him through a mutual friend of ours, John, in the UK, and he gave me an hour of his time, and this is just, for me, it was pure gold. I hope it helps you guys, no matter where you are in the world. As I always say, thank you for tuning in. Thank you to David for his time, and folks, enjoy the show. Get your pen and paper out. This guy's got loads of knowledge. Welcome back to another episode of the show, ladies and gentlemen. And today, joining me, yes, now the Zoomie. Everyone's loving the Zoom. David O'Mahony from London, just near Wembley, mate. We were just saying before. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's an absolute pleasure, Marcus.
Mate, obviously it is, and this is the title. People know that's why they've downloaded it. We are going to talk today all about adversity. Lots of people are going through it. Mate, before we get to the current day, I want to wind back, and it's basically 10 years ago. There was something life-changing, I would say, happen in your life. And I think through that, you're probably one of the most qualified people I will have ever had on this show to talk about adversity. So, mate, kick us off. What happened 10 years ago?
So back in 2010, I was serving in the armed forces. I was based in London. And we went out and attended a military boxing event that night. And literally across the road from my barracks, as I stepped out, a vehicle seemingly from nowhere, hit me, pulled me beneath the vehicle. And I was very lucky that at the time I was surrounded by a lot of senior military personnel who once they freed me from the vehicle, administered emergency first aid, kept me alive just about until doctors had arrived, at which point they had to induce a coma at the scene. I think it was evident to them that I'd suffered quite a severe brain injury because I was non-responsive. I was then whisked off to a London hospital where I spent, I think it was 4 weeks in an induced coma, and then a couple of weeks after that on high dependency support. And I was then sent off to a military rehabilitation centre in Surrey. And my fight back really started from there. While I was in the coma, they had to remove the right-hand side of my skull to allow my brain to swell out. And unbeknown to me, they weren't going to replace that skull for 10 months. My family had been told to say their goodbyes, and, you know, that I'd suffered a brain injury with a mortality rate of 93%. That there's no chance for this guy. You should consider switching his machine off. And of course, my family, you know, that was the last thing they wanted to do. And thank God they didn't, because I could so easily not be here today based on that decision. And then once I left rehab, and I was sent home and told to stay there for 10 months until they were ready for me to come in for brain surgery. And I think I'd spent it was the Christmas period I'd spent at home. And then I was thinking to myself, I can't sit at home for 9 months doing nothing. It just didn't. And all I wanted to do was just get back to the army, get back to work, get back to seeing and living and working with my friends. And so I took the decision to move back to my barracks. I think I was induced into the coma on the 7th of October 2011 and released at 2010 and was released from rehabilitation on Christmas Eve that year. And I think it was the second week in January, I decided I'm moving back to my barracks. And once I got there, it was great being around my friends, but they were all going to work and I was stuck in my room. That wasn't enough for me. And so I started presenting myself to the medical center every Monday morning saying, I need something to do. Give me something. You know, I'm going crazy, sat in my room all day with nothing to do. And of course, because of the big hole in my head, the army didn't want to touch me. And I persevered. Work was important to me, but as far as I was concerned, nothing had changed and I was no different. And after constant pestering, the army eventually gave me a job. I think it was 4 hours a week I was working. I wasn't by any means doing what I was doing before, but it was something. And to me, it was an opportunity for me to each day rebuild and get back to the soldier and the person that I was before this accident. And I found some success. I was selected to march the Great Britain flag out at the opening ceremony of the Paralympics in London in 2012, which was pretty special. But beneath all of that success and the strength and the resilience in fighting back, I was suffering from mental health issues, but completely unaware that I was. And at the time, you know, I was experiencing problems of anxiety. And when I was anxious, I would go out partying, or I'd go to a casino and gamble. That was the only way that I knew at the time to deal with this feeling that was anxiety, that was unknown to me. I think it was a week before the opening ceremony, I received a call from my surgeon who said that they'd had a plate constructed in Switzerland. They'd sent it over and they were ready for me to come in for reconstructive brain surgery. Now I knew that the layoff time for brain surgery was at least 6 weeks, the doctors had told me, but I knew that if I decided to have the op, there was no way the army were going to let me medically clear me to march that flag out. And I didn't want to miss out on that opportunity. But at the same time, if I didn't have the op, I knew that with half of my head missing, there was no possible way I would be able to wear the military headdress. And so I thought to myself, you know, I'm not going to, you know, miss out on this. I need to do what the army's trained me to do, and that's to adapt and overcome. And so I told the army that I had a medical appointment in the Midlands, and because of my brain injury, I needed a couple of days to travel there and back. And I went off to a London hospital, had brain surgery, and I woke having had my skull reconstructed. And I pulled myself up out of bed and started packing my stuff into a bag. And the doctor came in and said, "David, what are you doing?" And I said, "Well, I'm going home. I've got the opening ceremony in 2 days." And he said, whoa, stop. He said, "Look in the mirror." And I had this massive tube hanging out the back of my head and this bucket next to me. And he said, "You can't go anywhere. You've got this drain, and we can't let you out until all of the blood is cleared from the inside of your skull." And so I'd sort of reluctantly stayed in hospital for, I think it was about 36 hours. And then they released me the afternoon before the opening ceremony. I went home, I had a shave. Thankfully, because of the surgery, the doctors had already shaved my head, so my haircut was good. And the following day, I went off to the Olympic Stadium in Stratford and marched the flag out in front of millions of people. And I sort of knew at that point that my military career was over, because as hard as I'd pushed, and I'd tried everything to sort of get myself physically and mentally back to where I was. And physically, I'd passed all of the tests, but mentally, I was way off. It was almost like I woke from that coma and someone had hit the reset button, because I couldn't walk. I thought I'd lost my legs, even though my friends were saying, your legs are here. But sat there, I was completely blind and to what was going on. And so I guess that sense of denial that had stayed with me and kept me going after the accident was a great thing in one sense, because it was what picked me up and has got me to where I am today. But it masked the problems. It masked the issues that my brain injury had caused. It masked my mental health problems. It sort of hid it all away from me, and basically sort of like the chimp in my head was saying, there's nothing to see here, just keep going, you're fine. And it wasn't until I left the army that that the chimp abandoned me and turned on me, because I think within about 3 months of leaving the army, I had to leave a job. I'd qualified as a swimming instructor, and I started working before I left the army, teaching children to swim. And I started to notice that I couldn't remember their names or their abilities. And I felt like I was letting them down. And so I decided that, being a swimming teacher wasn't the right career for me. And I was offered the driving job that I've just left. And at the time I took it on full time, even though doctors had said to me, you're never going to be able to work a full-time job, David, don't aim so high in life anymore, settle for a quiet life. And I was thinking to myself, are you kidding me? That's not me. Again, the chimp was saying, you're fine, David, keep going. And so I took the job on full time. And as I said, after about 3 months, the depression, the anxiety, suddenly it was everywhere. I could see it in a way that I never had been able to, I believe, as a result of the denial masking it. And I sort of tried to push on through it like I had previously. And it wasn't working. And what started to happen was I started to have suicidal thoughts. And suddenly this chimp that was, pushing me in in what I perceived as the right direction was saying to me, what would you look like hanging from your wardrobe? And I'd find myself looking up at my wardrobe, imagining myself hanging there and looking at the color drained from my body. And at the time, again, when I had that first thought and that voice in my head, I sort of shrugged it off as, what on earth's wrong with you, David? Pull yourself up, get a grip. And then a few days later, I found myself getting out of the shower and putting my bathrobe on. And that chimp, as I tied the belt around my waist, said, take that belt and tie a loop in it and put it around your neck just to see what it would feel like. And I'm thinking, again, brushed it off. And every day I got into the shower, the chimp got a little bit darker, and I'd find myself standing there in a daze for 10 or 15 minutes with the belt in my hand, and the chimp saying to me, trying to edge me into experimenting with this, go and hang the belt on your wardrobe door just to see what it would look like, or put it around your neck and tighten it to see what it would feel like. And this, I didn't know at the time this was, suicidal thoughts. This was just a sort of an inner battle I was having with myself. But the longer it went on, and the longer I stood there sort of daydreaming, giving these thoughts time, it scared me more than anything in my life ever has, because I suddenly understood that same chimp, or that same part of me that had pulled me through this accident, was now slowly, preparing to take it all away from me. And I have no doubt that over a period of time, left unchecked, that, it would have taken my life. And I was very lucky at the time that I was working with some solicitors on some private family matters, and they were speaking to me and my sister, and they'd said for a long time I needed to go and see someone, and I'd sort of said, I don't need therapy. That's, it's not going to do anything for me. And I don't know why I said it, or I think I said it in passing or as a joke, that, I was imagining myself hanging from my wardrobe, and the solicitors in the room stopped and were all looking at me, and I was sat there thinking, what's the attraction? And that was when they said, whether you like it or not, you're going to see someone. And they forced my hand, and my sister at the time had said, look, just do this, And I was sort of blasé about the whole situation, and said, okay, well, if you're paying for it, I've got nothing to lose, I will go. And then I started working with a neuropsychologist, and that was where sort of, I say, life burst into color for me, because, I understood the feelings that were going on around the anxiety and feeling worthless and these thoughts, but for some reason, logically, you would, if one of your friends was going through that, you would say to them, maybe you should go and speak to someone about this. But in my own head, it was almost like the chimp was saying, was writing all of that off before I could even think it. And I remember I sat down with the psychologist and on my first session, and he asked me to keep a journal. At the end of each day, sit down and write about my day and pick things that I'm grateful for, things that were nice about my day and good deeds that I had done. And at the time I was like, you kidding me? I thought I needed to medicate this problem. And I guess where I am today is sort of, I owe it to that neuropsychologist, and also myself, for actually taking on these tools, because what's happened since, and particularly not necessarily the accident, but my journey with my struggles with mental health, is got me to where I am today. And that's now why as a speaker, I'm, as you saw on the weekend, I'm delivering sleep workshops, daily reflection workshops, mindfulness workshops, resilience talks, to try and use my own experiences to hopefully catch someone who's in a similar position to me, who doesn't understand what's going on in their head and doesn't, needs that one sentence or that one story to go, hold on, while what I'm going through is different to what David's gone through, maybe I can apply some of what he's applied over the past and during the present to my own life to help me, get to a happier, more fulfilled place in life.
Yeah.
That's it.
Mate, I'm literally, you're speaking, I'm writing questions, you speak more, I'm writing more questions. I've got a list like this long. What an amazing kickoff, mate. This is so good. I think the first thing that I want to hit you with, mate, is this whole in adversity. When we suffer adversity, your crash, society wants us to get back to normal as soon as possible. It's yep, that happened. And this is exactly what I'm seeing here. This is what you did. you were like this, yeah, I just need to get on with my life. Yeah, my head's a bit messed up. That's all good. Physically, I'm fine. And I think you said that. You're like, physically, I was, and it's like, and you talk about like things that are like, that your body is absolutely fine. But then you realize that it takes time for you to deal with it mentally. This is really what we're saying, aren't we? Which is so applicable right now or towards the end or wherever we are within what's happened. People are facing it. So what's your, like, looking back on it now, mate? I've got loads of stuff, but the question is, like, why do you think, this is the first question of a lot, why do you think, or do you think what I said is true? And if so, why did you try and move on so fast?
It's definitely true. I mean, particularly in the army, but even more so now in the corporate world. And I guess life in general, both from outside sources and within ourselves, is this. We all find ourselves on this treadmill. We need to keep going. We can't stop, because if we stop, we're going to get left behind. Now, for me, it was, a double-edged sword, because what the army had instilled into me allowed me to survive what I've been through, because as the doctors had said, there's no hope for this guy, switch his life support off. And then when when they said they were going to bring me from the coma, they said he's going to be in a vegetative state. And I woke kicking and screaming. So I very much have the army and the treadmill, mindset to thank for that, because, I believe, and doctors had said that I wasn't prepared to give up. But then on the flip side of it, you have, the alcohol abuse, the gambling, the relationships with friends and family that were affected as a result. And I guess, I always say to people who say, oh, you're so strong and you're so inspiring to have come through that accident. And actually the accident was easy. That wasn't me. That was my fight or flight system through that. And everything up until the point where I started to struggle with mental health, because at that point I was on my own. My fight or flight couldn't help me anymore. It turned against me, because I believe I'd been living a life that hadn't supported my brain as it was with its injury. And so I found myself, I guess, having to look inwards, and that was, God, I think 2010. I didn't have this, mental health breakdown until 14. That's 4 years. Wow. And, in the army, I had an unbelievable amount of rehabilitation. I sat down with psychologists and psychiatrists, and I had occupational therapy, and it was all great, but it was too soon for me. And I had no control over that. And I think that, like you said about, it didn't matter, but physically I was fine, but mentally, it took those 4 years for it to come out of me. And, there wasn't anything that I could have done differently to have changed that in my own head, because, as much as we feel we're in control of our brains and our bodies, if the suicidal thoughts taught me anything, it's that my brain owns me, not the other way around, and that my brain will only, will do things when it's good and ready. And includes acceptance and, allowing me to achieve things I never have. That actually, it's, you can't just take a tablet and suddenly be ready to address your demons, or, they'll come out of you when they're good and ready.
Do you think that's really interesting, mate? Will they come out when they're good and ready? Or, like, it's amazing. And just hearing that for the first time, the amount of help that you obviously had from the army makes total sense. That's a process to try and get those demons to come out, isn't it? But I don't
think it is. I think it's the first day I turned up to rehabilitation, they sat me down and they had all the consultants, and they, very, very fluffy meeting where they say, okay, David, so, tell us what you think is wrong and how we can help. And I was sat there stern-faced, half of my head missing. And my response was, there's nothing wrong with me. I'll be home by Christmas. And they they laughed and, okay, David, this is what we're here to do. And they penciled me in for 12 months of rehabilitation based on my brain injury. And I think I spent 2 months there, and then I was sent home and released for Christmas. So I think, if you break a leg, there's a process to re-healing. Or, if you have a back injury, they'll look over past injuries, and this is how they come up with their rehab and, journey back to normal life. But I think with a brain injury, it's complete. It's almost unknown, and everything the doctors had said was wrong. Now that's not because I outwitted them or I was, too strong. It's for whatever reason, my brain had responded in a different way than someone else's. And so I think that maybe the clinical textbook approach to psychology and rehabilitation is maybe a bit outdated in that sense, but at the same time, they were doing their best. And, they threw everything at me, and it just bounced off of, my fight or flight system just said, no, I don't need that. I don't need that. I need to get home. I need to get back to work.
Yeah. It's super interesting because like I was saying before, it's like when people come and see you when you've had an injury, it's like, when will you run again? Or when will you go back to work? And that's what we're sort of processing without almost letting the brain process it. You said something there about your brain controls you, and maybe you believe that for everyone, the brain controls. At what point did you feel that actually you start to control your own brain?
I don't think
you do now, or how do you feel with that, mate?
I have a relationship with my brain and myself. When I got to the point of those suicidal thoughts, looking back now, the anxiety, the depression, the sleep problems, the anger, the anger outbursts, the lavish spending, going into a nightclub, and when the nightclub closes, going to a casino because that's the only place that's open, and putting £200 on black like I'm rolling in money. That was my brain saying help. Just my defense system saying, look at what you're doing. But at the same time, that same brain wasn't able to self-reflect and go, hold on a minute, this isn't normal. I shouldn't be doing these things. And so it wasn't then until I started working with a psychologist and he introduced me to the journaling. Almost everything else he said at the very early on sort of went straight over my head. But he had always said, and if you've seen the TED Talk, if you can get to 30 days unbroken journaling, you'll have the answers to your questions, David. And my question was, how is keeping a diary going to stop me killing myself or change anything for me? It sounds so ridiculous. But then once I'd eventually got to 30 days unbroken and I went back to him and he said, what's different? And I said, things are happening in my life, for the first time since before the accident. And even then, I wasn't getting the opportunities that I was now. And I just said, it's freaking me out a little bit. And his response was that I thought at the time something bad was about to happen to me because all of this good was happening in my life. And he'd said that, no, in fact, what's happening is you're changing the relationship you have with your own brain. And in turn, the way you view your life and everything that's going on in it, be it good or bad. And that's manifesting positively in other ways. And so I think from that point on, I don't want to control my brain. My brain has a mind of its own, and there isn't anything I can do to change that. I guess what I'm committed to doing moving forward in my life is doing the best I can to support my brain with its injury, and adjust where I need to, and sort of, if I need to swallow that bitter pill, then swallow it, and make the changes I need to make to support it. Because before the injury, I was, I guess, living I was an actor in a film, in my own head. I wasn't the person I am today. And so, I'm so truly grateful to be in the position I am now, to have this understanding and awareness of myself, and this consciousness almost of that allows me to go and achieve the things that I'm able to now. And of course, my big aim is to try and help others do the same. Now, I'm fully aware that, we're all on different journeys in our lives. And so me, taking someone for a workshop, it's got to catch that person like it caught me at the right time. It's a lottery almost, because our brains have to be in a place where they're open enough to accept that, firstly, I'm not okay. Having suicidal thoughts isn't okay. These are suicidal thoughts. Let me go and do something about that.
Mate, you just said something there that I made an actual note about this earlier, and you've said it, so I want to jump into it. You said before your accident, you were living literally like a rock star. Do you think that, obviously we see, like, when people have a big event in their life, things start to happen after it. You also had, call it a colorful, I don't think it's any different to a lot of people, but you've had quite an entertaining life before this accident. Do you think that these things that you were facing were completely a result of your accident, related to, obviously it hit your brain quite hard and you've got half of your head missing and all of that? Or do you think there's some things from earlier in life that it was now time to deal with?
Well, I think so I had my accident, I think I was 28. And up to that point, I was almost living life based on, my childhood, my experiences up until that point. And, I was a normal guy. I had normal jobs. I lived beyond my means. I always projected my thought into the future, saying, I need to have more. I need to earn more money. I need to have nicer clothes. I need to have a nice car. Whereas once the accident happened, I think that my past had built up a level of resilience and denial that got me through the accident and out the other side. But then it was only once I started struggling with the mental health issues, which weren't related to necessarily the brain injury or my past, more so the fact that I was living a life that my injured brain simply couldn't support. Mm. And so, drinking alcohol, brain injury, is a no.
Doesn't go too well, mate, does it?
It's like breaking your leg and going out for jogs. It's effectively what I was doing. I was irritating the injury, and because it was an injury of the brain, it then rolled over into, mental health problems. I think my past every now and then rears its ugly head, and it creates some insecurity. And, I often have these conversations with myself where I'm, for example, getting ready to go up and speak on the TED stage. And the old me is saying, you're going to mess this up. You're not good enough for this. Because before my accident, I couldn't have spoken to a room of 5 people, rooms of hundreds. And so I guess now there's the old me and the new me. And it's not a case of getting rid of the old me. It's a case of understanding the old me and using that, when I need to achieve certain things, but then to rein it in, telling me I'm going to fail or I'm going to mess up when there's no evidence to actually support that.
Yeah, it's fascinating, mate. It really is. And I just appreciate how open you are about sharing it, mate. It's really very inspiring to listen to, and I'm sure it's helping a lot of people. I want to pull out some of the stuff that people can actually practically do. We've spoken already about journaling, mate. Maybe you want to talk a little bit more about that, what it was, because a lot of people are talking about journaling and then someone will sit down with a pen and go, what am I supposed to do next? So maybe your sort of 2-minute guide to journaling and sort of how you did it and how and why you think it benefited you. Because I know that's something that you're big on.
So the journaling exercise is super simple, and I didn't come up with this. This is, a psychology, compassionate approach to ourselves. And all it is at the end of each day, the last thing you do before you get into bed, you sit down and you write about your day. And in doing so, you reflect. Now, it's important you reflect rather than introspect, so to negatively reflect on your day. Be completely truthful and open, whatever's going on in your head and what's gone on in your day, just to get it down onto paper. So, for example, I would say, today, I woke this morning feeling like I'd had a good night's sleep. That's great. I went about my day. If, for example, I said, I woke this morning feeling tired, I would then think to myself as I'm journaling, well, why was I tired? What did I maybe do that had an impact on my sleep? And then I think back, did I have coffee? Was it the high intensity workout that I'd done at 10 o'clock at night? And then, if it was coffee, for example, I'd say to myself, my sleep was probably affected because of the coffee I had at 9 o'clock. I'm not going to do that tonight, and let me readdress that tomorrow. Okay. I went out and I went to pick up a friend and drove him to his appointment. The roads were lovely and quiet. He wasn't in the hospital very long, and I came home. And it's just literally, you could say, over the very early on, I would say, I had thoughts about hanging myself, or I made a mistake at work and I felt like I was going to lose my job, or I felt like I'd failed because I didn't complete Murph in the same time that John Maxwell did. And it's very difficult in 2 minutes to get it across. But what you find is that at the end of each day, once you finish journaling and you get into bed, you almost hit a reset button with all of those things you've reflected on, ready to apply to the next day, so that when you wake up, I've a blank page in my journal that I can rewrite. And so what happens over time is I found that I was getting stronger and stronger and making less mistakes and being more proactive in my day-to-day life than just reactive, which meant that I started to have kinder conversations with myself, which allowed me to be creative and start to step out of my comfort zone, knowing that if I fail at something, that's okay, because I can look back at why I failed, reset and go again. And then once you've just written about your day on a single page, you would list 3 things to be grateful for in that day. And that's not what you were grateful for. It's looking back at my day, what are the 3 things I could be grateful for? So I could say, Marcus, I'm grateful for you because you'd invited me on your podcast. I'm grateful for the lack of rain in London. I'm grateful for my breakfast. You pick 3 things that were nice about your day, even if at the time they didn't feel nice. This is all about reflecting what could be nice. You know, having a conversation with Marcus was nice. My morning coffee was nice. Just picking things. And then picking 3 good deeds that you had done in the day. Now, this is a big one that we don't even recognize that the good that we do from day to day. So if I said to you, Marcus, how many good deeds have you done today? What would you say?
Yeah, the immediate reaction is nothing. I've just done what I do, you know?
You know, you invited me on the podcast. That's a good deed. You know, have you wished anyone good morning or asked anyone how they are? You know, these are good deeds. Holding a door open for someone, good deed. Going to buy your morning coffee and instead of just saying, I'll have a double espresso, please. Thank you. Saying, good morning, Louise, if she's got a name tag. How are you? You know, can I have a double espresso, please? How's your day been? I wish you well for the rest of the day. Take care, you know. And what happens is the reason they say 30 days is because it takes 30 days to create new neuro pathways in our brain. What that essentially means is, you know, messages and how we respond to certain things. And so after 30 days, what you start doing is you start walking around thinking, you sip your coffee and think, you know, that's nice. I appreciate this. Or you walk around and the sun might be shining and you can feel the sun on your skin and you say, do you know what? I'm grateful that it's warm here. Or I'm grateful stepping into, you know, being able to own a car or live in a house. And so you've got this win-win situation where you're growing each day as a result of the reflection. And then the 3 points on gratitude, things that were nice and good deeds you have done, are building your self-esteem and making you and reminding you every day that however bad my day's been, you know, there's been good parts. And so it takes your focus away from the bad and puts it onto the good. However, they outweigh themselves. And essentially just starts to change the way you view your life.
That's incredible.
And that's, you know, for me, it's so powerful because, you know, I'd watched things like The Secret, you know, 20 years ago and sort of thought, this is great. How do I do this? And then you think, how do I apply what they're saying to my life? But the journaling has essentially done that for me because, you know, I'm one person. And if I look at what I've been able to achieve, you know, on a business level, it's nothing. But on a personal level, you know, every day, or when I get messages from people like you wanting to invite me on a podcast, and I think, how? You know, how, I'm not out there actively seeking this stuff. It's coming to me.
Yeah.
And this is why I'm sort of a global spokesperson for the journaling, because, you know, I'm not massively connected to people. I've not got, you know, I'm not rolling in money. You know, it's purely the work of changing the way I view my life that's allowed me to step outside of it and achieve the unthinkable, really.
Another tool that you're quite big on, David, and that's, I saw you, I've had plenty of you visually in the last week or so, mate, both good experiences, is sleep. And I watched you deliver a webinar the other day on sleep hygiene. Maybe talk to us a little bit about how that about addressing your sleep has helped you to clear your mind, or what actually the benefits have been, mate. Because I think that's one of the problems as well, is that, you know, everyone knows kind of that we need better sleep, but do we really know why we need better sleep? And do we really know the big impact of good sleep?
No, definitely. So let me first explain how and why I started to look at sleep. What happened after the journaling after these, life started to change, and I started to think, hold on, if this has done this for me, what else is out there that's going to have an impact on my life? And I read a book by Nick Littlehales called Sleep, and he works with the British cycling team when they won all of their golds. And he talked about marginal gains. And it was at that point that I decided I'm going to adopt a marginal gains approach to my life and try to educate myself and apply as much as I possibly can that's going to help me and make me as efficient and as high functioning as I possibly can. And so Sleep, I read that book maybe within a week or 2 weeks after going back to see my psychologist and reporting these changes as a result of the journaling. Now, of course, because of my brain injury, sleep's hugely important. And I'd never had an issue with my sleep. But it was just something I thought, well, just because I don't see a problem doesn't mean there isn't one, and doesn't mean it can't be better. That was my approach to sleep. And so I read the book and I adopted everything. And then what didn't work, I put to one side, and what worked, I sort of instilled as a staple of my life. And again, just like the journaling, the changes I made as a result of that, the sleep hygiene, opened up another level for me. As it was simple things like just, applying a routine to my sleep and understanding that it's completely normal to wake up 15 times a night, so long as you don't have a problem falling back asleep. Understanding that it's the journaling downloads everything that's going on in my brain at the end of the day, so that when I get into bed, I'm not sat there thinking about it all. It's been addressed. And then that gives me the room to move through sleep cycles without the interruption of, the days, the previous days, ups and downs, the failures, the successes, the what might be's. And it's very hard to explain, my experiences and what it's done for me. But the changes are different. And as you heard in my talk, I say that for an Olympic athlete, it's the difference between gold and silver. But for normal people in everyday life, the changes are much, wider. And it's sort of, it's again allowed me to go on and achieve things and deal with the ups and downs and balance, keep a healthy balance in my life and manage my mental health. Because the one thing I noticed as a result of my brain injury is if I have a bad night's sleep, the day is so much harder for me. And it takes me often maybe 4 or 5 days to recover from one bad night's sleep. And so I guess, and I say to people that sometimes I'm very lucky that I've got the brain injury, because I'm handcuffed by it. And I understand that, if I hit snooze on that alarm, there's going to be repercussions, whether I like it or not. I can't cheek it. And so that the sleep hygiene workshops and the journaling workshops come about because I was delivering talks. And the feedback was great, because people would say, you're so inspiring and you're so thought-provoking. All of this incredible feedback, but I didn't feel like I was sending people away with anything tangible to apply to their own lives. And so, I created the journaling and the sleep workshop and then the mindfulness workshop to sort of pass those tools on to other people, whether they're ready or prepared or able to adopt them at the time of me delivering them. Just to put them out there to try and, even if someone says, someone on our webinar had said to me, contacted me after and said that they were criticizing themselves for waking up in the middle of the night. And it was only that me saying that it's completely normal for a human to wake up 15 plus times and eat a night, many of the times we're not aware of it, that made her say to herself, something clicked, and she said, well, I no longer need to be critical of myself for that. And that's the aim, really, to have those moments with the workshops.
Two great tools, mate. What else did you do or do you believe in that has helped you through what you've been through in sort of the last, well, that span we've talked about really is 10 years. Is there anything else that's key and that maybe you're doing more work in now?
I think mindfulness is a big one for me. I never believed in it. And I created the workshop because at one of my sessions with my psychologist, he put me in a chair and he said, I want you to close your eyes and lay back and relax your body. And he took me through a body scan exercise, and I felt my body floating in the chair, and I snapped out of it and went, whoa, what on earth, what's going on? And he said, this is a tool that you can use yourself at home or wherever you are, and it will take the edge off of your fatigue. And so delivering that is always interesting because, for example, a few weeks ago, I delivered a talk to the army, and I got to the mindfulness bit, and one of the gobby lads stood up and said, are you telling me you're going to put me to sleep? And I said, I never once said that you're going to fall asleep. This is just an exercise to show you the benefits of it. And, I think probably 95% of the time when I do this, everyone is asleep after about 5 minutes. And when I brought the room back around and I said, when you're ready, bring your attention back to your bodies and open your eyes, he jumped straight up and said, how on earth did you just do that? And so, when I say mindfulness, I sort of, that's the generic term, but it's more relaxation and just being able to press pause on life. So I've used that exercise on a train coming home from work, going to work, in a stressful situation at work where I can feel myself getting worked up, and I'll just hit pause, sit, park up, put my hazards on, sit back in a chair and take myself through it. The only other sort of one of the biggest things for me is faith, really, and hope, not in anything else, but in myself and my own abilities. Now, I was Christian, I was baptized, and I'm a Christian, but when I say faith, I don't mean, to any specific religion. And what happened when I was suicidal one evening, I was sort of half awake, half asleep, laying in bed, having these thoughts. And I don't know what came over me, but I started to pray, not to Jesus, not to Allah, just pray to God. I don't know who God is. And I asked for strength and some guidance. And I felt this wave of, this level of relaxation that I'd never had in my life. And I remember waking up the next day thinking, is this a dream? Was that a dream, or did that really happen? Because that was cool. And so since then, every night when I get into bed, I say thank you to God. Again, I don't know who God is. I don't know if it's a person, an energy, the universe. And I just I say thank you for gifting me a new day. Thank you for the strength, health, and guidance you provided for me today. Please strengthen me through the evening and give me a new day tomorrow, and strengthen me with the same health, guidance, and miracles that you've strengthened me with today. And it sounds crazy, to speak about something like this, but it's, you imagine that's become part of my routine. And so it means that I end each day not only, with that day in mind and ready not to make the same mistakes tomorrow, but almost drawing a line under it and saying thank you, I'm super grateful, please, do the same for me tomorrow. And that sort of, when I find myself in tough situations, like really tough situations, which I do, life isn't all up. There's just as many, if not more, downs. But I have this sort of unconscious faith and hope that, like I'd said to you about leaving my job and then the world going into lockdown, my instant thought wasn't, Jesus Christ, what am I going to do? I need to go back to my employer and say, I need my job back. There's this level of calm that said, and faith and hope that this is only going to go on for so long. And it's obviously meant to be. We'll deal with it as best we can. And at some point, we're going to come out of it. And so it's super powerful for me. I can understand now why people are religious and have faith. Even though I don't believe in a certain one, I see that there's a deeper and bigger meaning behind all of it. And that's it, really.
That's incredible, mate. Honestly, unbelievable, mate. I could listen to you the whole day. This has been literally amazing, mate. I'm super grateful for your time. I'm literally here, just eyes open, and everyone will be giving me a hard time because I normally sort of talk a lot more in these shows, but I've just sat and listened and made notes, and it's been amazing. So, mate, I want to acknowledge you. I want to thank you. I also want to wish you all the best for what you're doing. As you said, you've taken a little bit of a plunge or a risk and quit your job to pursue what you want to do in inspiring people and helping people. And that's, I've seen a lot of people go through that, and it's something truly amazing when someone does that, mate. So congratulations for the start, and you'll do great, I'm sure, with the way that you talk. Mate, I want to wrap it up with sort of your parting advice. And I know you've given us loads, but if there's one piece, if someone came to you and said, David, I need your best piece of advice. I'm in trouble. I'm suffering. I'm not having a good life. What would you tell them the one thing they absolutely have to do?
I think to the person that is openly admitting that they're struggling, my advice would be to direct them to a psychologist or a psychiatrist would be the first port of call. But to someone who is saying everything's fine, I guess my advice would be that, just like with my sleep, just because you don't see a problem doesn't mean there isn't one. But not only that doesn't mean by applying something you can't be better. And be open-minded, give everything a go. What you like, keep. What works for you, keep. What doesn't, disregard as an experience. And just, look for opportunities to challenge yourself and step out of your comfort zone, even if that means going to a CrossFit session, your first CrossFit session, picking up the phone and booking an appointment with a therapist, going to see your doctor, whatever that may be, just get it done, because, left unchecked, it's only going to deepen the hole. And we as humans are, everyone listening in, are capable of so much. And we may be reaching, a tiny amount of our potential. And the only way to actually go out there and reach anywhere near our true potential is to step out of our comfort zones and stop giving new things a go.
Amazing. Mate, we'll wrap it up there. Absolutely brilliant. I'm going to put links in the show notes over to your website, davidomahoney.com, and also your Instagram, Daring Gratefully. Most of the folks over here are Insta crazy, so we'll direct them over there. And I'll also put a link to your TED Talk as well, mate. I think that's something that everyone should spend 15, 20 minutes
Please, I'd be super grateful. I'm trying to build an Instagram following, legitly, and so you know, I'm not interested in Instagram followers that aren't prepared to engage, and you know, so please, you know, share what I'm trying to do. Follow me, get involved with my page and my posts, and feedback on the TED Talk if you watch it, and indeed this podcast, because I always feel like I blabber on and on and on, and it's, you know, it's never comfortable doing them.
No, but, mate, it's you've given us a lot. I'm sure there's a lot of people, as we said at the start, mate, dealing with adversity. You've covered it all off there, mate. You've given the tools, you've given the reality. It's super powerful. So, mate, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Marcus, mate.
Awesome.